to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
I had the good fortune of having Zach's new member interview a couple months ago.
Yes.
And we were going to meet, and then it didn't work out for some reason. I think I had to go out of town unexpectedly or something. So we just did it over the phone. But I really liked him. Like, he's a really personable guy, a really nice guy. And so I'm kind of bummed we didn't get to meet in person, particularly now that that you're on the podcast and all that, and now he's gone. But he mentioned the wedding situation. So walk us through that, because now as I'm trying to recall, I can't quite remember. I feel like you got married, but then later got married or something, like had a celebration. Obviously, COVID affected it all. And as we talked about before the podcast, Scott Thomas, one of our pastors, wound up doing your wedding virtually. So when was the wedding planned, and what all kind of transpired there?
So we got married on April 13th via Zoom. So that is kind of the setting stone area. But we were supposed to get married in December.
Okay.
And there were a bunch of complications with that. And so we decided to postpone it until April. Or it was actually supposed to be May 23rd was our next date. It's so confusing, I can't even remember it. So we had that date, and COVID hit in March, and governments were shutting down to where people weren't getting, in Davidson County, we were not able to get a wedding certificate. And we had waited, it was almost a year and a half for our engagement at that point, and we were ready to get married.
You were engaged for a year and a half? Why weren't they giving out marriage certificates?
Davidson County had been shut down at that point because of COVID. So and I think that only lasted for a couple of weeks. If any.
I didn't even know that actually. I didn't even know that happened.
So I was just freaking out. And of course, since I was working in news, I was watching all of this happen and seeing all of the unknowns with COVID. And now here, if I would have known hindsight, we could have gotten married in May. Everything kind of governments shifted so you could get it via mail and all of that stuff. But I was just sitting here. I had been waiting to get married for a year and a half. Both of us just wanted to go ahead and be married and start our lives. And so the beginning of April, it's like April 1st or something like that, we decided to go ahead and go to White County, which is where Zach's family lives, and go ahead and just get a wedding certificate.
Is that in Tennessee?
Okay.
It's
in Sparta, Tennessee. It's great.
Sparta,
hiking.
I've heard of. Which direction though?
It is east.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And so we went ahead and just went to White County and got a marriage certificate and just decided we don't have to use this, but if we want to have it, that's great. We don't know what our wedding's going to look like. And, at that point in April, May did not look like we were going to have a big wedding like we thought we were going to have anyways. So we just sat there for a couple of days and just looked at each other like, let's just go ahead and do it. May 23rd is going to look the exact same as April 23rd as April 1st,
Yeah.
So we, in about 2 weeks, talked with our families, and they were so gracious with us, and just they were trying to plan different things. We were going to have it at his families, and then we were going to have it at my families. And turns out my dad's a firefighter in our hometown, and he could not leave the city that he works in Collierville, Tennessee. And then my mother-in-law and my husband's grandparents were too afraid to travel 4.5 hours away to, they'll have to stop at gas stations and use the restroom. And they were just terrified of the virus because at that point we didn't know what it was. So we just dropped everything. We're like, we're just going to do it on Zoom. I'd seen a couple of people do it on Zoom online.
Oh, really?
Other, news stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I knew it was possible. We talked to Scott Thomas about it, and he said he was up for it, and he was amazing. He got everything together. I didn't even understand Zoom at that point.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I would have thought as a reporter you'd be all over that.
I was learning. I was doing a lot of FaceTimes at that point. I learned Zoom slowly.
Yep.
But at that point, I had never really done much of it.
I see.
Now I know too much of it.
Right. Yeah, everyone does for sure. Even Lincoln.
Yes.
Who's in school.
Yes. They're all everybody's having to do it. But we just got everything together, and we did it on a Monday.
Okay.
because that worked for me. I had 3 days off after
Okay.
that. So we had a little bit of time to ourselves and
Yeah.
just decided to get it done.
Cool. So a Monday, and it was in a beautiful building that's right by the river, but I've not been in that building. Which building is that?
It's called the Bridge Building. I got
Okay.
really lucky. I interviewed the owner, and it was just a normal Zoom, or I think at that time it was FaceTime interview, one of those over the phone interviews. And then the next day I was with a photographer. He was shooting some B-roll at a school, just an empty school. And a man passed us running, and it turns out it was the same guy. And so we
The owner of that building?
the next day.
Oh,
So
wow.
we just sat there and talked 6 feet apart. And then he, thanked me for doing the interview. I thanked him for doing the interview. And then he was like, yeah, I remember you saying something about you getting married. If anything happens, because it is such a weird time, just let me know. So I talked to him, and turns out all of his employees hadn't been doing anything, and it was in the middle of wedding season. Nothing was happening. So I walked in, and for little to nothing, walked in there, and they had flowers and they had candles and they had our bouquet and boutonniere all done up. And I was not expecting any of that. I just needed a place with Wi-Fi, honestly.
Right.
That was pretty for our news story, because the station covered it.
I saw that. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty. I mean, that building is beautiful. So do they do events in that space?
Yes, it is a wedding venue.
Oh, it is a wedding venue. Okay. And it overlooks, for those that don't know, it overlooks like the river that runs right through Nashville, Cumberland River. But then there's that really pretty red metal art thing that has a view of that. And I think the Titan Stadium is right there as well, right?
Yes.
It's really pretty. And for those that want to check it out, because WSMV did cover it, they can just Google, I don't know what I was Googling, but probably if you just Google
WSMV, Shelby Stevens,
Yeah.
Zoom. If you just put WSMV Zoom wedding, I think it'll pop up.
Okay. Yeah. And particularly, certainly if you include Zachary and Shelby Stevens, it'll pop right up and they can kind of see. I mean, it's because I know Scott, so well. So I mean, it's so cool to see him. There he is, like standing right where he should be. You know what I mean?
We put
like
the laptop
right between
right
you
where-
guys. There's a shelf and there's a laptop. And there's Scott in his in his office. He's got all the books in the background, like all the Zoom calls that I've been on with him and the elders and everything. He's sitting in the exact same chair, just officiating a wedding. It's actually pretty cool. I noticed he had a suit and tie on and everything, like he dressed for the occasion.
Everybody dressed
and then
up.
You had family but how was the family? Okay, so was it a Zoom call? And Scott was just one of the attendees, and the family was also, or did you have two computers? Because I didn't see two computers there.
He was the one who started the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
And so he had control of it. He recorded it for us.
Okay.
And then
cool.
Everybody else just called in. So we had a moment it was really sweet, actually. Instead of walking down the aisle, we just both sat right next to the computer, and we muted ours, and we turned off our camera, and we watched as everybody popped in and started talking to each other.
Oh, that is cool.
And it was just like, a Zoom meeting for work. Everybody came on in, except everybody was a little happier.
Yeah. Did people have drinks and stuff? Like they were
a lot of people were at work or doing work.
Okay, because it was a Monday, wasn't it? Okay. In the afternoon, or what time?
It was, I believe, 1:00.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool.
People were taking their lunch breaks just watching a Zoom wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is the thing that we all sort of forget very easily is if you go back to end of March and beginning of April, there was so much unknown about this. I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen, where this was all going to go. I think we kind of forget that. And now we know a little bit more, and people have varying opinions about whether we're reopening fast enough or too fast or all those things. But back in March and April, it was like we were on a rocket ship. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Everybody was agreeing for the most part that we should stay home. And so nobody wanted to leave. Everybody was, and that was the great thing about having that April wedding is everybody was just so happy for it and knew it was the only way. There was no family or friends who were like, wait, you should just get together anyways. It was just, let's all be safe.
Yeah.
And let's do this thing and no hard feelings. We're just going to love seeing it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.